Can you believe it? I came home from a hellish 10-hour shift, utterly exhausted, dreaming only of a hot bath and a quiet evening, only to walk into a scene straight out of a horror movie. My house, my sanctuary, was trashed, reeking of stale beer and cheap perfume. And there were strangers, actual complete strangers, passed out on my living room furniture. And the worst part? My stepchildren, whom I had explicitly told to never have people over when I wasn't there, especially not without asking, just shrugged and said they forgot to mention it. Was I wrong for the way I reacted? Tell me, honestly, what would you have done if your home was invaded by a horde of uninvited guests, thanks to the sheer irresponsibility of the people you were trying to raise? Let me take you back to the beginning of this nightmare, because it didn't just happen overnight. My husband Mark and I have been married for 5 years now, and when I say I married him, I also effectively married his 2 children, Sarah, who's now 17, and Jake, 15. Their mom, Mark's ex-wife, she's a piece of work. She's always been very hands-off, leaving Mark to do most of the heavy lifting when it came to parenting, even before their divorce. So, when I came into the picture, I knew I wasn't just getting a husband. I was getting a ready-made family. And I embraced it, truly. I tried my best to be a good stepmom. I cooked, I cleaned, I helped with homework, I drove them to their activities, and I listened to their teenage dramas. I even dipped into my own savings more than once to make sure they had nice clothes or school supplies that Mark's child support just couldn't cover. I genuinely wanted them to feel loved and secure in our home. Our house, a 3-bedroom ranch, was a cozy place we'd bought together. A place I poured a lot of my own money and energy into decorating and making feel like a home. It was our home, a shared space. But I was also the one who bore the brunt of maintaining it. Mark works long hours, often traveling, and while he's a wonderful husband, he sometimes struggles to see the day-to-day chaos that unfolds when he's not around. The kids, bless their hearts, are teenagers. And like many teenagers, they believe the world revolves around them and that rules are merely suggestions. From the very beginning, I set clear boundaries. One of the most important rules, the absolute golden rule, was that they were never, under any circumstances, to have friends over when I wasn't home. If they wanted friends over, they had to ask me first, even if I was home. And if I wasn't home, it was a flat-out no. My reasoning was simple. I didn't know their friends. I didn't know who would be in my house. And frankly, I didn't want the responsibility or the potential for things to go wrong. They nodded, they agreed, they promised. Of course, stepmom, Sarah would say with that saccharine smile of hers. We understand, Jake would mumble, already looking bored. I thought we were all on the same page. How naive I was. There had been little instances before, small tests of the boundaries. A friend just stopping by when I was running to the grocery store, only to find them still there an hour later. Or muffled voices from Sarah's room late at night, which she'd attribute to FaceTiming. I'd given them the benefit of the doubt, thinking they were just pushing the limits, as teenagers do. I'd remind them gently but firmly of the rules. This is our home, and we need to respect it and each other. I thought I was laying a solid foundation of trust and respect. The week leading up to the incident was particularly stressful. My job in marketing was demanding, with a huge project deadline looming. I was working 12-hour days, often bringing work home, burning the candle at both ends. Mark was out of town on a business trip, leaving me as the sole adult responsible for the house and the kids. I remember explicitly sitting them down before Mark left. Look, guys, I'd said, I'm going to be super busy and tired this week. I need you to step up. Keep the house tidy, do your chores, and absolutely, positively no friends over while I'm at work, okay? I just can't deal with any extra stress right now. They both looked me in the eye and agreed, promising to be good and responsible. I even praised them for their understanding. That's my responsible teens, I'd thought, feeling a little surge of optimism. That Tuesday, I left for work at 7 a.m., utterly drained already, but determined to power through. I got home around 6:30 p.m., the kind of tired that seeps into your bones and makes every muscle ache. My head was pounding, and all I wanted was quiet. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something was off. The front door was slightly ajar, which was unusual. I always made sure it was securely closed. A knot of unease began to form in my stomach. I pushed the door open, calling out, "I'm home!" Silence, That was even more unusual. Normally, I'd at least hear Sarah's music or Jake's video games. The air, however, was thick with a strange smell. A mix of something sweet and cloying, like cheap air freshener, trying to mask something else. Something acrid. Then I heard it, a low murmur of voices from the living room. My heart started to pound. This wasn't right. I walked into the living room, and that's when the horror really hit. It was like a bomb had gone off. Empty snack wrappers, soda cans, and God knows what else were strewn across the coffee table and the floor. My beautiful cream-colored sofa was stained with dark rings and food smudges. And there they were. 3 unknown people, 2 guys and a girl, all passed out in various states of disarray on my furniture. One guy was sprawled on the sofa, his shoes still on, muddying the upholstery. Another was practically face down on my rug, a half-eaten bag of chips by his head. The girl was curled up in an armchair, snoring lightly. My stomach lurched. Who were these people? I stood there for a full minute, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. The shock quickly morphed into a searing rage, a kind of anger I hadn't felt in years. I stomped through the living room, past the sleeping strangers, and into the kitchen. It was no better. Empty pizza boxes, spilled drinks, and a general layer of grime covered every surface. The sink was piled high with dirty dishes. "Sarah! Jake!" I roared, my voice echoing through the silent house. "Get down here now!" A few minutes later, Sarah shuffled down the stairs, followed by a sheepish-looking Jake. They both looked utterly bewildered, as if they'd just woken up from a deep sleep, which they probably had. "What is going on here?" I demanded, gesturing wildly around the disaster zone. "Who are these people? Why are they in my house? What happened to our rule about no friends over?" Sarah actually had the audacity to yawn. "Oh, hey, stepmom, sorry. We just had a few friends over. It got a little out of hand." A few friends? These weren't a few. And a little out of hand was an understatement of epic proportions. My jaw dropped. A little out of hand? "Sarah, there are strangers sleeping in my living room. Your shoes are on my sofa. The house is a pigsty!" "You promised me, both of you, that you wouldn't have anyone over," Jake mumbled. "We just forgot to tell you. Forgot to tell me. Forgot." 2 simple words that ignited every single nerve ending in my body. They didn't forget. They deliberately chose to disregard my clear instructions, my boundaries, my respect for our home, all while I was busting my butt at work to provide for them. They didn't forget that I was stressed and needed their cooperation. They didn't forget the trust I had placed in them. They simply didn't care. So that's the situation I was in, my home violated, my trust shattered, and facing 2 teenagers who couldn't even offer a sincere apology. I had to make a choice. Let it slide, or draw a line in the sand so thick it could never be crossed again. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have been the understanding stepmom? Or would you have unleashed the fury of a woman scorned? I took a deep breath, trying to control the shaking in my hands. The anger was so intense it felt like a physical heat rising from my chest. "Get them out," I said, my voice dangerously low. "Get every single one of these people out of my house right now. And then, you 2 are going to clean this entire mess. Every single crumb, every stain, every single dirty dish, until this house is spotless. If I find 1 speck of dirt, if I smell 1 hint of that stale air, you will both be grounded until you're 30. Sarah, still looking half asleep, started to protest. "But stepmom, they're asleep. We can't just kick them out." "Oh, you absolutely can," I snapped. "You invited them, you wake them up, and you escort them out the door. If they don't leave, I will call the police and have them removed as trespassers. Your choice." The sudden change in my tone, the sheer force of my anger, finally seemed to penetrate their teenage haze. Jake's eyes widened and Sarah's jaw dropped. They had never seen me like this. They usually saw the patient, understanding stepmom. Today, they were seeing something else entirely. Reluctantly, they started trying to rouse their friends. It was an awkward, embarrassing scene. The passed-out guests grumbled and groaned, confused about what was happening. It took a good 15 minutes of shaking and cajoling before they were all coherent enough to gather their belongings and stumble out the front door, leaving behind a faint trail of their cheap perfume and body odor. Once the last stranger was gone, I turned back to Sarah and Jake. They stood there, looking miserable, but I wasn't feeling any sympathy. Now, I said, the cleaning. And I mean everything. I want the living room vacuumed and shampooed. I want the kitchen disinfected. I want every single dish washed and put away. And while you're at it, you can both explain to me exactly what you thought you were doing, and why you believed it was okay to disrespect me and our home in this way. They spent the rest of the evening, well into the night, scrubbing and cleaning. I didn't help. I sat in my room, the door closed, occasionally checking their progress. Every time I heard a complaint or a groan from them, my resolve hardened. This wasn't just about the mess. It was about the blatant disregard for rules, for trust, for respect. It was about them taking advantage of my absence and my hard work. The next day, when Mark called, I laid it all out for him. I didn't yell, I didn't scream, but my voice was cold and steady as I recounted every detail. He was, to his credit, horrified. He apologized profusely and promised to come home immediately to deal with the situation. When he arrived 2 days later, he held a long, serious talk with both kids. Their phones were confiscated, their allowances were suspended, and they were grounded indefinitely. But it wasn't just about the punishment. It was about the breach of trust and the feeling of violation that lingered in our home. It's been a few weeks since then. The house is clean, sparkling even, thanks to their diligent work. But the air still feels different. The trust is gone, at least for now. I still feel a knot in my stomach every time I leave for work, wondering if I'll come home to another surprise party. It was a harsh lesson for them, and an even harsher one for me. I learned that sometimes being the understanding stepmom isn't enough. Sometimes you have to be the one who lays down the law, no matter how uncomfortable or angry it makes everyone. I still love Mark, and I still care for Sarah and Jake, but this incident has fundamentally changed how I view our household dynamics. My home is my sanctuary, and I will protect it fiercely. They now know that I mean what I say, and that there are serious consequences for violating my trust and disrespecting our shared space. I hope, truly hope, that they've learned their lesson. But the sting of that night, the image of those strangers in my living room, will stay with me for a long, long time. So, that's my story.